Hey everyone, this is Steve coming at you from Snow Day. It's winter wonderland outside. But one of the nice things about online classes is that we can do stuff during a snow day, and that's part of the reason why I'm recording this short update on stuff that's going on in class. So just give you some updates on where we're at. And right now, when I say that, I'm looking at the class website just to sort of like go over some of the things that have recently come up and the things that where we're heading next and things like that. So last Friday, everyone was supposed to be done with the first half of the Codecademy exercises. This is the Make Your Own Website series of exercises. And for the most part, people are done with that. I've got a few stragglers out there, and if you know who you are, we're going to get a hold of me soon. Um, for our purposes, in terms of learning HTML and CSS, this is about as far as we're going to go in this class this semester. But there's a lot more stuff that we could do. One thing, for example, I've had students do before is make an index page for their own exercises on people.emush.edu. So instead of seeing just that sort of list of files, you could actually have a full-blown website that has links and stuff like that. On your people.emush account to the pages that you made for your exercises. Now, the second part of the assignment, which a lot of people actually kind of like got into early for some reason, I don't know why, but the second part of the assignment is not due until the end of March. And for that second part of the assignment, what you need to do is go see some other tutorial on Codecademy and try to work through it. And then by March 29th, I think that's the right date, you want to write a brief essay where you sort of reflect on the process, both of working through the Make Your Own Website Codecademy exercises and whatever exercises you decided to work through on your own. Two things about the exercises you work through on your own: you can do whatever one you want, and whatever one is closest to your ability. So if the if the Make Your Own Website exercises were pretty easy, pick something complicated. If the Codecademy exercises for Make Your Own Website were kind of hard, pick an easier one. The second thing is that you don't have to show your work for this. I trust that you're going to give this a try and that you're going to write about the experience. And truth be told, you don't even necessarily have to finish the second tutorial. I just want you to dip your toes into it. Why am I having you do this? The reason I'm having you do this is because the way that coding stuff like this, the way you learn this stuff nowadays, is by trying to work through it. And for those of you who are going to go into some kind of profession where you're writing text for the web, and that's a broad set of professions, I think that you can learn what you need to know about coding through tutorials like these on Codecademy. So I want to get you familiar with the idea of trying some of these other tutorials. For those of you who get interested in the coding aspect beyond just writing, that is, you just like the idea of digging further into the code, by all means you can do that. And you can, again, you could take courses like in computer science and other departments on campus where you learn how to do this. They have some courses like this in the College of Technology too. Or you can just take these two tutorials. There's a whole bunch of online resources where you can learn JavaScript, and you can learn PHP, and you can learn Ruby on Rails, and you can learn HTML and CSS and all kinds of computer stuff. You don't have to be a computer scientist to learn how to do this stuff. Okay, so that's the Codecademy exercises. Part one's basically done. Part two is going to be due at the end of March. Graduate students, you need to send me, if you haven't already, your ideas for what you're going to do your graduate student project about. We're going to interview somebody who's a professional in the field. And after break, we're going to email back and forth. Actually, I take that back. Probably. So graduate students, what you need to do by the end of this week, and I think just about everybody has done this, is email me and tell me who you want to interview for your graduate student project. Remember, all the graduate students have to do essentially an interview presentation with somebody who's a professional in the field to talk about how things that we're learning about HTML and CSS and web design and social media and also the kind of stuff that's maybe applicable in the real world to the kind of work that they do. We'll start talking, the graduate students amongst ourselves, we'll start talking about a schedule for when people will present about these things later on this week and into the week after winter break. But if you look at the schedule, you'll see that starting at, let's see, I'm looking here, about March 26th, 29th, it says TBA graduate student presentation discussions. That means that we'll start probably the last couple of weeks of class where probably two of you at a time will go to present about the interviews that you've conducted. But like I said, we'll email about that back and forth a little bit. Now, heading into this week, first thing I want to note is that we're going to start work on the quasi-usability study stuff by the end of the day on Monday. Well, what that means is that every group needs to have the 4 or 5 or so tasks that they want their users to try to do, the scenarios. And remember, the scenarios are things like instead of just basically having a task that says register for classes or something, have the scenario along the lines of you're a new student at Eastern Michigan University. You're going to start classes in fall 2018. How would you register for classes or something like that? Just kind of, but in other words, describe it as sort of like almost like a story problem in math. In other words, try to get people to sort of walk through it. Every group needs to have their usability scenario questions posted on their discussions, or sent to me via email by Monday. And a couple of you have already done that. Then what I'm going to do is take those questions and essentially assign them to other groups for people who haven't been looking at these websites yet. And so everyone will be working through somebody else's usability study scenarios. Okay? And then each of you will write a brief essay, about 1,000 words or so, reflecting on your experiences of trying to work through those scenarios and what was good or bad or what you learned about the website in question. And you'll post that on your WordPress writing portfolio website, the same place where you posted your Codecademy exercises, also as a page. And you'll post that text to your website by the end of the day on Friday, February 16th. One thing I just want to emphasize here, this is just the first part of this usability testing. And what we're really doing here is kind of a practice usability testing, because what you're going to end up doing later on in the semester after winter break is you're going to create a website based on the text that you sent me earlier in the semester, the essay from another class. You're going to make a website based on that. And then you're also going to go through some usability testing on the website that you made with an actual person, face-to-face usability testing. So this really, all we're really trying to do is just get an initial taste for that. This is sort of a practice session for usability so that hopefully you will have learned some things from what we do this week that you can apply in your own usability test when you're working through your own website. Okay, so that's the usability part of things. Groups are going to send me their questions by the end of the day on Monday, and I'll get those out to everybody. And then your short responses about that usability test will be due on Friday. Okay. The other thing is that after winter break, we start getting into the social media collaborative reader project again, where everybody's going to contribute readings. Now, this project hasn't gone as smoothly as I would have hoped. It's difficult to do these kind of collaborative things online because, again, we're in different places and different times. And so, it hasn't been as efficient of a process as I would have liked to have seen. And so the assignment's probably going to adjust a little bit. And we're probably going to do one round where I'm going to ask each group to share readings from the personal private lives group, the professional lives group, and so forth. And we'll start that the week after winter break. So I'm looking at the schedule right now, and so what I have on there for February 26th is we're going to start talking about the readings of the personal private lives group. So the people in that group need to send me links to what it is they want us to talk about as a class before winter break. So ideally by the end of this week. The same goes to the professional lives group too. Send that to me before the end of this week and before break, so I can post that and so people can get a chance to read that, before we start talking about it. We'll do the same thing with the other groups. But I think that this is probably going to be the only round in which you get a chance to share with the entire class readings on particular areas that will make sense for this project. I think what we're going to shift to next, and we'll talk about this after the break, is I'm going to ask everybody to make contributions, like write up 2 introductions for the articles and contributions for the area that they're working on right now, and that will be due probably sometime in mid-March or so. I think probably about March 14th is what I have on the schedule now. And then I'll also ask people by the end of the semester to individually do two more contributions, not necessarily from the group that they've been working on, but one of the groups that we've established for this anthology. So we're not going to have quite as many texts as I would have preferred, and we're not going to have necessarily as rich a conversations about some of these texts as I would have preferred, but I think that we'll still be able to pull it together. The short version is that you've been talking amongst your groups right now about readings to contribute starting after winter break. I want to hear from you, from your individual groups, about what readings you've settled on so I can share those with everybody starting right after winter break. The last thing I'll mention is that sometime next week I will probably also be figuring out the first half of the participation grade. Now the participation grade is something I've been grading your participation discussions as the semester has gone along. This is the part that has letter grades in it associated with various discussions we've had. And essentially all I do is do a kind of an average of your grades for the first half of the semester and assign a point value to that, and some grades for the second half of the semester and assign some point value to that. So by the time, by this time next week, you'll have the grade for the first part of participation that you did this semester. You can't really do anything with that past this. There's no way to make up for or get additional points or whatever else from this from things that you've done. It's just going to be done. But then the second half of the grade will be for the second half of the semester. Okay, I think that's it. Someday it's going to stop snowing. Not anytime too soon though. So stay dug out, stay warm. Hope your power stays on. Me too. And I will see everyone online.